Hey everyone, and you're very welcome to Self-Leadership with Krystal Long. And welcome to Season 3. It's actually lovely to be saying that because this season feels like a bit of a new chapter for the podcast. If you've been listening for a while, you know that the podcast originally started as the Empowered Self podcast. And while I'm still really proud of that chapter, so many of the conversations we had around confidence, well-being, personal growth, and finding your way back to yourself are still very much a part of what I still want to talk about. Over the last while, I started to notice that something was changing. The podcast was changing, and honestly, I think I was changing too. Over the past year, I've been studying, coaching, facilitating, teaching, meeting different people, having conversations through the podcasts, and doing quite a bit of reflecting on my own life and where I'm going next. And one idea just kept coming back to me again and again. Self-leadership. The more I thought about it, the more I realised that this is really at the heart of so many things we've already been talking about. Things like confidence, boundaries, career decisions, personal growth, knowing yourself, trusting yourself, and learning when to stay and when to change direction. And sometimes when to simply say, you know what? Actually, this is not working for me anymore. And that's what brought me to the new name, Self-Leadership with Krystal Long. Now, when I say self-leadership, folks, I'm not talking about leadership in the traditional sense. You don't need to manage a team. You don't need to be in a senior position. You definitely don't need to have your life completely figured out, because I definitely don't. And for me, self-leadership is much more personal than that. For me, self-leadership is all about getting to know yourself well enough that you can begin making decisions from a place of self-awareness rather than always looking outside yourself for permission or reassurance. And I think a lot of us do that without even realizing it. We can spend so much of our lives thinking about what we should be doing, what other people expect from us, what looks sensible, what looks successful, what everyone seems to be doing. And sometimes we become so focused on all of that that we forget to ask ourselves a much simpler question. What do I actually want? I know I've been asking myself that very question quite a lot lately, and I don't always have the answer. I think that's important to say as well. Self-leadership doesn't mean you suddenly become this incredibly confident person who never doubts yourself. I certainly haven't. And it doesn't mean every decision becomes easy. Sometimes it just means being willing to listen to yourself just a little bit more. Maybe it means setting a boundary. Maybe it means saying no to something. Maybe it means admitting that you've outgrown a situation, an environment, your job. Or maybe it means changing your mind. Maybe it means trying something new and having absolutely no idea if it's going to work out. Or maybe it just means slowing down long enough to notice what you actually need. One of the things I've realized through my own personal development is that growth isn't always about becoming more. Sometimes it's about becoming more yourself. And I really like that idea, because personal development can sometimes start to feel like another job or another project, and we're constantly being told to be more confident, more productive, more successful, more disciplined, more positive, and so on. And after a while, you can nearly feel exhausted just trying to improve yourself. But what if growth isn't always about adding something. What if a part of growth is just letting go? Letting go of expectations that don't belong to you. Letting go of needing everyone to agree with your decisions. Letting go of the idea that there's one correct path through life. And maybe learning to trust yourself enough to say, this is where I am right now, and this is what feels right for me. That's really the direction I want to take this podcast. Season 3 is going to explore self-leadership in a very practical and very human way. We'll talk about confidence, boundaries, self-trust, career changes, identity, burnout, values, personal growth, decision-making, and so many others. We'll talk about the times when you know something needs to change, but you're not quite sure what the next step is. We look at some coaching ideas and tools along the way as well, and I'll share things that I am learning and reflecting on myself. And I don't want these episodes to sound like I'm sitting here telling you what you should do with your life. Far from it. That's definitely not what this podcast is all about. I want them to feel more like a conversation. Something that might make you stop for a minute and think, actually, I've never looked at it that way before. Or maybe something that gives you one question to take away and think about it during the week. Because sometimes one question or one good question can be more useful than somebody giving you 10 pieces of advice. And for those of you who've been listening to the Sunday Reset Rituals, I'm delighted to say that they're continuing too. I know many of you enjoy those little episodes. They've become a lovely part of the podcast, and I didn't want to lose them as the show evolved. So the structure for this season is going to be a little more spacious. Every second Wednesday, I release a main episode like this one, where we explore one of those self-leadership themes in a bit more depth. Then on the Sunday of that same week, there will be a Sunday Reset Ritual. Those Sunday episodes will still be shorter and quieter. A chance to slow down, check in with yourself, and maybe take one of the ideas from the main episode and think about what it means for your own life. I really like that idea of having both. The Wednesday episode gives us something to think about, but then on the Sunday Reset, it gives us a little bit of space to actually sit with it. Because I think that's often the part we miss. We consume so much information. We listen to so many podcasts. We read books. We save quotes. We learn things. But sometimes we don't give ourselves enough time to ask, okay, but what does this actually mean for me? And that's something I want to encourage more of this season. Not just listening, but reflecting. Not just learning about ourselves, but actually bringing some of that learning into our everyday lives. And there may be times throughout the season when I share something and you completely agree with me. And then there also will be times when you're listening and thinking, hang on, Krystal, I'm not sure about that one. And you know what? That's perfectly okay too. You don't have to agree with everything I say. In fact, I think part of self-leadership is being able to hear an idea and decide for yourself whether it fits or not. This podcast isn't here to give you a rule book for your life. Rather, it's here to encourage you to be curious about your own. So as we begin this season, there's one question I'd really like you to think about. What would your life look like if you trusted yourself a little more? Not completely, not overnight, just a little more. Would you say no to something? Would you finally say yes to something? Would you have a conversation you've been avoiding? Would you stop putting off a decision? Would you give yourself permission to rest? Would you change direction? Or would you simply be a little kinder to yourself about the fact that you don't have everything figured out yet? You don't need to answer right now. Just let the question sit with you. And we'll come back to some of those ideas throughout the season. If you'd like to come along for season 3, make sure you follow or subscribe to Self-Leadership with Krystal Long, wherever you listen to your podcast. That way you get the new main episode every second Wednesday, along with the Sunday reset rituals later that week. And if you ever hear an episode that makes you think of somebody, feel free to share it with them. You can also leave a rating or a review if you've been enjoying the podcast. It really does help other people find the show. And before I finish, I just want to say thank you. If you've been here from the beginning, back when this was the Empowered Self podcast, thank you for continuing to listen and for coming with me as the podcast evolves. If you've joined me somewhere along the way, thank you too. And if this is the very first episode you've ever listened to, you're very welcome. I think one of the nice things about this new season is that I'm not coming into it pretending that I have everything sorted. I sure do not have everything sorted. Just like many people, I'm figuring things out too. I'm also learning. I'm changing. I'm questioning things. And I think that's probably true for a lot of us. Maybe you're in a period of change yourself. Maybe you're questioning your career, your job. Maybe you're rebuilding your confidence. Maybe you're trying to understand yourself better. Or maybe life is actually going quite well, but you still want to save it a little more intentionally. Wherever you are right now, folks, I hope there'll be something in this season that speaks to you. So here's to a new chapter. Here's to trusting ourselves a little more. Here's to making choices that feel like our own. And here's to learning what it really means to lead ourselves from the inside out. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the Self-Leadership podcast with Krystal Long. And welcome to season 3. And I'll talk to you again real soon.